Okay, three major breakthroughs in Clark Kegley's Metamorphic program. And this was big. This, um, this program was a life changer, I will say. And just to give you a quick backstory to put everything in perspective, I've always been this kind of a hard charger mentality, gravitating towards the things that would, give me the personal freedom to go all out, test my limits, see what I was capable of, whether it was adrenaline sports or working out, whatever. After I graduated college, that translated into the corporate world where I was in sales and would go after all the sales awards and then eventually becoming an entrepreneur. And that is where the fun begins. So let me back up just a second. I met my dream girl when we were both teenagers. We go to college together, and of course, get married. Get out of college, and I'm making pretty good money. So, young, dumb, and full of something, I start pursuing the toys that give me the same adrenaline I pursued my whole life. Of course, that ran its course. And then we decided to start a family and sold the house, went out and bought a ranch, a couple acres, put in a pool. And well, we bought different toys, raised three little adrenaline monkeys, and we're having a blast. It was the late 90s, early 2000s. Everything was going great. Then, of course, 2008, the financial markets hit. And I was fully invested in real estate. I had bought 12 rental properties and was in a big commercial deal right before all this stuff hit the fan. And well, the rest of it's kind of history, but we couldn't focus on anything but raising our kids. Our life felt turned upside down. So we put all our energy and effort into making sure our kids didn't pay that price and that we can enjoy along the way the things that they were doing as they got older, they were teenagers basically, through high school, going off to college, playing sports in college, and we just focused on the real things and making sure they had the opportunities they wanted to have in their lives. And our family was super close together. We just bonded together even more so from that. And
Oh my
that
God.
was the key that kind of held that was the glue that held the family together, I guess, to some degree, which is kind of odd. Parents live close by, thank goodness, have a special needs sister, live close by. And our family has just continued to grow. As we know, a lot of times what you see on the outside is not necessarily what's going on the inside. So even though we looked relatively okay on the outside, we were both exhausted, to say the least, um, burned out physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. And this is the time that I signed up for Metamorphic to get a mental tune up to get my head back right. My wife did some things that she's doing on her own, that are very similar. And yeah, this is what was going on when I got on board with Metamorphic. Breakthrough number one, it had everything to do with inner shadow shifting and letting go. I realized how much I was looking back on what happened in terms of the financial hit, looking at where I would be had that not happened on a regular basis based on this. And this was prior to COVID. Because after COVID, everything doubled. So prior to COVID, it was already, shocking some of the things that had realized financially would happen. But bottom line is, I couldn't hardly function sometimes when I started looking at numbers and understanding where I would have been had things not happened like they did. There's other things that happened during that time frame that were major events that were unrelated to the 2008 crash. Like I got in a very bad accident, me breaking my neck. My wife having a deadly disease that nearly killed her. We had a lot of tragic things happen in this really short, compact time frame. Had never had time or whatever that would come through working through that process, and identified the things that I had been focused on and what were going on, and all these things that were going to be heavy factors in terms of going forward. Not only really just going forward, but living in the present, enjoying the present. I did not realize really how bad it had gotten that I was not able to enjoy the present anymore at all. That was tough because I had plenty of reasons to be enjoying the present and the now. Have great family, have great relationships in our family. All I could focus on was on the money hit and still struggling financially in a lot of ways to get through that. So, and the key to moving on from the past and getting those thoughts out of my head on a regular basis was taking a third-party observation of what was going on. In other words, instead of looking at it like it's me going through this and it's me taking everything personal, I looked at it as if it was a friend going through the situation. And I could literally start breaking down the solution to the problem. And that was a huge breakthrough, not only in the part of the past, but dealing with things in the future, in the present, that your mind wants to keep racing with. Just taking it out of play. The number 2 breakthrough was identity shifting. I've actually done it most of my life. I just had no idea it was actually identity shifting. You actually take an identity of something or something you want to do prior to all the other pieces coming into play. In other words, easy way to explain it, surfing. So when I was a little kid and I wanted to start surfing, I had a bunch of friends, had older brothers that were surfers, and loved the whole vibe of surfing. The freedom of it, the going to the beach, which I always loved, being in the water, absolutely loved. Everything was right about it. And then the flowing down the wave. I just knew I wanted to surf. So I watched everything I could about surfing, got surfer magazines, got a board, started doing all the research that you would do, not like, pen and paper research, but just excitement of it, becoming obsessed. That's probably the best way to put this. It's like a combination of being delusional and obsessed in the one package, something like that. And while I was at the beach, obviously that was the easy part. You're in the water, surfing, catching waves, so on and so forth. But going to the surf shop on the way home, smelling all the smells with boards that would get made with the resins and all that stuff. I loved it. I loved literally every part of it. And all the smells from the surf wax. Back at the time, Mr. Zog's sex wax for surfboards, by the way. It's a grip that goes on top of surfboards. Had the best smelling waxes you could imagine. They were like fruits. In particular, coconut was my by far favorite. Still to this day, when I smell it, it immediately reminds me of surfing back in the 80s when I started. And I would go home. I would, every time I go home, I clear the wax off my board just to do something with the board, re-wax it, look at magazines, put pictures all over my walls of surfers, especially surfers I really liked and liked the style, the way they surfed. And I basically just learned everything I could all around me at all times of how to become a surfer. And I actually became a surfer, and didn't say it like this at the time, obviously, but I was a surfer before I was actually a good surfer. And by doing that, all the other pieces flowed with it. The emotion was already there. The story was already there. The actions were just, another part of the picture versus the other way around in the traditional way. And you just start surfing and then see how that goes. If that goes on long enough, I might start getting some emotion that attaches with it. And after a little while with emotions and the actions, maybe I'm going to get some beliefs. Maybe I am, going to be a surfer. Maybe I can do this. Maybe this is going to be something I'm into or I'm all about. Actually getting down to the point where the identity is, okay, I'm officially a surfer. I've gone through this process for a long enough time, equals up to the fact I'm now a surfer. Well, that may or may not work because all these other pieces may not come into play. You're going to become a surfer, take on that identity, and then put all the other pieces together as they do, with action. And the action is all of that, And that's what identity shifting is. I took that same approach with everything that I ever did that I became very successful with. You're not faking it until you make it or acting as if. You are being as if. You've already taken on that identity as if it has already occurred, and all these other pieces are just other things to come into play as they come into play. Identity shifting is the key to manifestation. So you got your 1.0 version, you got your 2.0 version you want to be. Well, there's a gap in between that. So in order to get from the 1.0 to the 2.0, that identity shifting is clutch because You literally start living as the 2.0 has already occurred. Everything that you're doing on a daily basis, your habits are changed. Nothing you did as 1.0 should be in effect anymore when you want to become a 2.0 and you're not anywhere close to what you want to be as a 2.0. Go, what would that 2.0 do on a daily basis to be absolutely that person as a 2.0? And that's how you take the approach. Third and final breakthrough was flow state. I've been trying to find flow state on a regular basis again for way too long. I didn't even know that was the actual name of it. I've always called it getting in my groove. And I was trying to find my groove again. That was the main reason I signed up for Metamorphic. I was out of my groove, couldn't do anything to find it anymore, struggling to do the simplest things that used to be so easy for me. And the beautiful thing to it is that once you go into flow state, there's hardly anything else that compares with it, to be honest with you. Flow state comes from a completely different part of the brain. It's like motivation from the core. It's usually enacted from things that are of passion, true interest, curiosity, things that are slightly above your level that require very initially intense concentration. So there's no distractions around you, and that you have a fulfillment and joy and passion for partaking in that activity. There's a godfather of flow state, Csikszentmihalyi, who kind of breaks down the scientific formula for flow state. But the basis to it is that when you're trying to do something a little above your abilities, that you have some passion about, that you have an interest and a curiosity about, some unknown factors to it, there's all these little pieces to it, which is exactly what it comes down to when you're trying to, in my case at least, going from my 1.0 to my 2.0. It's a challenging state, and it forces some of the triggers that put you into flow state. But you have to get through the hard part to get to the flow state. And the hard part is the full intensity of the consciousness that it requires to eliminate all distractions, be purely focused on what it is you're trying to do or achieve. And then after time and repetition and all these other factors, intrinsic motivators, eventually you get to this place where flow state kicks in, and all of a sudden it's like getting supercharged. You can learn 500% faster. You can be 500% more productive. You can have abilities way beyond. Maybe the best way to put it is that feeling of you are doing exactly what it is you are meant to do or to be, because it just flows. It just flows effortlessly. Getting back to myself again so that I could find that, person that seemed to find flow state on a pretty regular basis with things I would do. And that was a breakthrough beyond breakthroughs, because that's where I have finally come back to, is being able to feel that again. And sorry, I'm getting a little wound up, but it is the best feeling in the world. It really is the best feeling in the world. And nothing seems impossible, basically, when that happens. So I guess the best way to wrap this up is that the three major breakthroughs. So number one was inner shadow shifting and letting go. Number two was identity shifting and bridging the gap. Number three, flow state. There were a lot more pieces to it, but bottom line, those were the three biggies and most powerful that occurred. I don't know what else to say. I am brain dead. This has taken me so long to do this. It's been so much more complicated than it should have been. I changed it so many times. I'll get better though. That's the beauty of it, is I'll get better at this. This was exhausting because I went in 18 different directions on this. I had such a hard time breaking this down. And now that I got done with it, it now seems so that's what I should have done to begin with. But I have struggled with this beyond words. I don't know why. Just one of those weeks, one of those months. No, sorry, one of those minutes. That's it. That's all it is a minute. And getting passionate again and getting energy back in me, natural energy. I couldn't do enough to create energy. Before I was doing all these life hacks. You could read 1,000 books, get 1,000,000 life hack ideas, take all these personal growth courses from whoever. But for me, it says keep it as simple as possible. Focus on the things that really do work, and then get it done. Raising your vibration, your energy state, anything that you really want to do and could do is based on how you feel, what your energy state is. When you learn and where you are on that consciousness chart, the bottom of that being, hate and anger, and at the top of that being enlightenment, love, and all those things, it has everything to do with what you're attracting in your life. You can't attract what you want. You only attract what it is you are. If you don't have an acceptance of yourself, it's hard to have an acceptance of other people. If you don't have patience with yourself and love for yourself, it's hard to have patience and love for other people. Clark and the team at Metamorphic have been unbelievable. It just feels like a little family, and it constantly has new people coming in, and a community there that has been really, really cool to be a part of. And I kind of like it. If you couldn't tell, I kind of liked it. I love it. Clark Kegley's a cool dude. Very, very cool guy. Shout out to Meredith. Everybody with I've met with Metamorphic is phenomenal. Truly is. Everybody's just a real deal, and wanting and pulling for everybody that gets in the program to be successful. It's just fun. It's a good group of people, and I really look forward to being a part of it as I get to my 10.0.